Hello everyone, I'm Thais and today I'm here to do my April wrap-up. April was a pretty good reading month for me, both quantity and quality-wise. I've been trying to read at least 10 books per month this year in hopes of completing my 100 book goal in the Goodreads reading challenge. And this month I managed to read 9 books and 1 graphic novel. I started April marathoning the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. The first book, Shadow and Bone, follows Alina Starkov, an orphan girl who lives in a country that's been devastated by war, and she finds out that she has a power and she's sent off to train with the Grisha, who are the magical elite of the army that's led by the powerful Darkling. Shadow and Bone is a really great introduction to the Grisha world. I actually think that that's the main focus of this installment. Even though the characters are interesting and they have a lot of potential, they don't get much development in this book. For me, Shadow and Bone was a lot more about the magical experience of getting to know the Grisha world. I actually felt like Alina, getting to know their powers and the luxury they live in for the first time. This book did a very good work at getting me hooked on this trilogy, so I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The second book is Siege and Storm, and when this book starts, we already get to see that it's going to be a lot different than the first one. There are a lot of characters being introduced and a lot of scenes filled with tension, and what I like the most about this book is that feeling of not really knowing who to trust and whose side people are on. There's this whole intrigue surrounding the characters in this one. Leigh Bardugo's writing is really addictive. I went through these books really fast, and in this one we actually get to see Alina's character develop a little bit, kind of preparing her for what she goes through on the third book. But the only thing I missed were more of Alina and the Darkling's interactions, because I think that they are really complex characters and it really shows through when they are talking without the interference of other people, and we don't get much of that in this book. Even though Siege and Storm was my least favorite out of the 3 books, it was still amazing and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The final book in the trilogy is Ruin and Rising, and guys, this is awesome. If the first book was all about the world, then this one, I think it's really about the characters, especially Alina and the Darkling. We get to know a lot more about the Darkling story, and if Leigh Bardugo were to write a book entirely about the Darkling, I'd be like the first in line to buy it. But putting that aside, Alina also goes through one of the best character developments I've ever seen. We saw it start in Siege and Storm, but in Ruin and Rising we see how really conflicted she is. And she's not playing good, but she's not playing bad either. It's great trying to see her balance that and deal with the influence of the people around her. The story itself was filled with unexpected plot twists that made it impossible to put the book down. So I thought it was one of the best conclusions to a trilogy that I've ever seen, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Reached. This is the third book in the Mesh trilogy by Ali Condi. I know that a lot of people think that this trilogy is really slow-paced and they don't like it because of that, but it didn't really bother me. In this book there's a lot more happening than in the other 2, so it makes getting through it faster a lot easier. We get Xander's, Kai's and Cassia's point of view, and I really enjoyed how the author managed to capture what the characters are feeling about what's happening and translates that into her writing, which is very poetic. Overall, I thought it was a really good ending to the trilogy, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next I read the graphic novel Lost at Sea by Brian Lee O'Malley. This book follows a girl named Rayleigh who believes her soul has been stolen by a cat, and when the story begins she's in a road trip with 3 of her classmates and we don't really know how or why she got there. Before I talk about the story itself, I'd like to talk more about the artwork in this book, which was one of the things that I liked the most. I don't know if you can see it, but it has this kind of cartoonish style to it, and the entire book is in this blue and pink color scheme, which I really enjoyed. And I haven't really read many graphic novels yet, but I think that this kind of artwork is my favorite. Now about the story, it is actually a little weird, but in a good way. Even with the whole "a cat stole my soul" thing that the main character has going on, this graphic novel is really about the difficulties of being a teenager, and I think it is really effective in giving us a simple yet accurate glimpse of that. The only thing that bothered me a little bit was that sometimes things got a little confusing and it was really difficult to figure out what was happening, and because of that I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Tiger's Destiny by Colleen Hooke, and this is supposedly the last book in the Tiger saga. I say supposedly because according to Goodreads, there's going to be a fifth book that no one knows what it's about, but I don't see how things could go on after the ending we got in this one. Things wrap up pretty well in Tiger's Destiny, and like in the rest of the series, the cultural references are all over the place, and we get to see a lot of action scenes. The prophecies and the fight against Lokesh actually get a lot more of the focus in this book, and the ending to this book is just heartbreaking. I couldn't stop crying while finishing this. But I have to admit that it was a pretty good conclusion, so I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next I read Island the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. This is a contemporary book that's the third one in the Anne and the French Kiss companion trilogy, and in this book we follow the romance of Isla and Josh, who is a character that we meet in Anne and the French Kiss. What I like the most about this book is that Isla is a very relatable character. In fact, her whole relationship with Josh felt really real to me. They're not perfect, they make mistakes, bad decisions, and they have to work really hard to make things right again. So even though there's a lot of drama in this book, the author balances it well with fun and romantic moments. So if you're a fan of cute contemporary reads, I definitely recommend this one. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Kisses from Hell, a collection of short love stories between vampires written by 5 different authors. I read this book very quickly, but I wasn't really impressed. I think I ended up giving each story 2 or 3 stars, except for the one by Richelle Mead, which I really enjoyed. But the other stories kind of fell flat for me. I felt like the authors tried to squeeze in a lot of information and they didn't know how to deal with that. So I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead. I've had the first 2 books in the series sitting on my shelf for a while, but I never felt like reading them until I read Richelle Mead's short story in Kisses from Hell. That story is actually set in the same world as the Vampire Academy series, and I really liked her writing, so I just thought, why not give this a try? And I'm really glad that I did, because this book is seriously amazing. I had a hard time getting into it at first, but about halfway through it I was captivated. Rose is such an amazing protagonist. She's sassy and she's fun and she's hard not to like. I also really enjoyed the world that Richelle Mead created. I thought it was very unique. I like the concept of 2 kinds of vampires, the Moroi and the Strigoi, and how they differ. So when I finished this book, I had to jump right into the next one, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Frostbite, the second book in the Vampire Academy series, and if I had a hard time getting into the first one, this one drew me in from the first page. There's more action, and the relationships between the characters are also a lot tenser in this book. The storyline takes a darker turn, and even though it doesn't end in one of those giant cliffhangers, it was still enough to make me look forward to reading the third book, so I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I forgot to mention when talking about Vampire Academy, but the Brazilian edition was published with the name Shadow Kiss, which is the name of the third book in the series, and then the third book in the series here in Brazil has a completely different name, and why did they do that? Anyway, so those were all the books that I read this month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what books you read this month, if you have any recommendations, and I'll see you soon on the next video. Bye!